Do you remember back when Hollywood cinema was gritty? And I don't mean gritty like the way that Seven or The Batman is gritty, although those are great movies. I'm talking back when films were so gritty that even the ones that were considered high cinema were potentially dangerous to make. That certainly seems to be the case for the film that we are going to be discussing in today's episode of Scene Breakdown when we take a look at 1979's The Warriors. If you're not a fan of this movie, I don't know what to tell you. It is a classic in my book. It's one that I rewatch all the time. It's been one of my favorite movies as far back as I can remember. But as with all the films that we cover on this series, some of the most iconic moments within the movie were completely improvised or otherwise sabotaged by outside elements. This movie specifically endured so much turmoil to get made that the end product being good, well, it makes it incredible. So stick around because we are going to be breaking down the opening "Can You Dig It" scene from The Warriors. A scene and a line that has no doubt been quoted by at least one or two of your uncles in your family.
Can you dig it?
Ooh, I can totally dig it.
So let's watch the scene together, take a look at some of the behind the scenes aspects, and figure out why this opening scene means so much. I'm Kier Gomes with JoBlo Originals, and you're watching Scene Breakdown. 1979's The Warriors, directed by Walter Hill and of course based on the novel written by Saul Urich. The movie is about a New York street gang called the Warriors who attend a truce meeting between all of New York's local gangs. But when the head moderator of that meeting gets shot and killed and the murder is blamed on the Warriors, they're gonna have to find their way home from the Bronx to Coney Island with every street gang in New York out for blood. It's a very 1970s movie. And of course I mean that in the best possible way. This movie is full of excitement. The journey from the Bronx to Coney Island is one of the most riveting you can find. And let's be honest, if you saw this movie as a kid or even as an adult, you definitely wish you were one of the baseball Furies. I know I do.
Holy shit.
The movie stars Michael Beck as Swan, who is kind of the leader of the film after the first scene. You also get James Remar as Ajax, kind of the muscle of the entire gang, although they're all pretty good at keeping themselves safe.
I'll shove that bat up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
Not to mention the group's original leader, Dorsey White, who plays Cleon, who unfortunately may or may not make it past this opening scene. Then you get David Patrick Kelly as Luther, kind of the antagonist of the piece, and then you have Roger Hill as Cyrus, who is kind of the entire reason why this scene is so good. As far as context goes, you don't really need a lot. This is pretty much the opening scene of the movie. This is the scene that sets everything into action. The only context we get before this is that every gang in New York is attending a meeting to set up a truce between all the gangs, effectively trying to limit gang-on-gang violence and create one super mega gang that can run the whole city. Pretty intense stuff, if you ask me, but let's get into the scene. And real quick, I just want to get this one out there before we get into it. Can you dig it? So bad. Now, originally this film was supposed to be set in LA, but I think they decided that the grittiness of New York worked better for the movie, and I agree. Beautiful teeth for a gangster, you know? Especially in the 70s. And actually, first pause of this scene, of course, this actor, Roger Hill, was actually not supposed to be in this film. He wasn't supposed to play Cyrus. They originally got an actual New York gang member to play Cyrus, who was all set to go, even running some of the lines with the director. And then when it came time for the first day of filming this scene, he was a no-show, and they literally could not find him. So they had to bring in this actor to kind of pick up the slack. And honestly, I mean, what a performance. We're going to see so much more of that in this scene, but originally not even supposed to be this guy, which I feel like, again, adds some, I don't know, some special lore to this scene, which makes it even more impactful. They had something like over 1,200 actual New York citizens at this meeting as well. A lot of real gang members are in that crowd, and in among them, supposedly, this is a rumor, has not been confirmed, supposedly Samuel L. Jackson is in the crowd in this scene somewhere as one of the gang members, as an extra. So if you can imagine Nick Fury lurking somewhere back there, that's pretty amazing stuff. I mean, if this was the first movie he popped up in, what a first movie. You know what I mean? Wow. But yeah, they had a lot of real gang members in the crowd. A lot of real gang members involved in the movie as well. We'll talk about that.
Nobody is wasting.
I do love, and I think one thing that helps make this movie stand out is I love the very of its time 1970s gang uniforms.
Is the way things
Incredible.
ought to be.
There's our boys. I love Cleon's headdress. Love it. Iconic.
You're standing right now with 9 delegates from 100 gangs.
Could you imagine Cyrus like narrating your favorite audiobook or something just like that? I would love it. I would listen to it every night before bed.
40,000 counting affiliates and 20,000 more not organized but ready to fight.
Ready to fight.
60,000 soldiers.
You know, one of my other curiosities is, does he actually talk like that, or was this a choice he made for the character? Because if you think about who this guy's supposed to be, he's supposed to be the gang leader. He's supposed to be the guy that every other gang in town will listen to if they're gonna listen to anybody. Big role to fill. I feel that you almost have to have a voice that projects like that and an energy that is that captivating, but it's almost so smooth that you might not feel entirely threatened by this one man. You know what I mean? I think a lot of that is made more interesting by how likable Cyrus becomes in just this one monologue before, you know, what happens. Incredible stuff. They also, I heard during the filming of this movie, they hired an actual New York street gang. They did that again for a lot of things on the production. They hired a lot of authentic gang members in New York. But they hired one gang called the Mongrels, who specifically was there to protect the film trucks from getting robbed or damaged in any way. Because the filmmakers, during the making of this movie, while they did include a lot of authentic gang members, they had other members of other gangs that were sending them constant death threats. They filmed everything on location in New York at night. So a lot of protection was needed. You have to keep in mind this was a very, very dangerous movie to make. A lot of gangs were not happy about the representation that they thought they would be receiving. So pretty scary and kind of a huge risk to take on, you know, what is now a classic film, but what at the time was maybe considered too much of a risk for what it was worth. I'm really glad it got made, but how insane is that? I just wanted to make sure I spent a little time on that because that's something that you don't hear about for very many movies. You know what I mean? I love this speech. Can you dig it? Kind of wish Cyrus was my dad. Is that weird? Look for Samuel L. See if you can find him. I heard also Swan, who's kind of the main character of this movie after this scene. I heard he was originally supposed to be played by Tony Danza. If you can even imagine that. Even in the 70s, if you can even imagine Tony Danza in this role. It seems a little goofy for me.
Without us allowing it to happen. You can tax the crime syndicates, the police, because we got the streets, suckers!
I love it so much. They're shooting permits too. I mean, again, they filmed all of this in New York on location, and their shooting permits that they had were all in Manhattan. This is supposed to be made to look like the Bronx, but this is Manhattan. And they ran out, their permits expired, they lost a lot of them during filming, and they kept filming anyway. So everything that you see in this movie, at one point in theory, was not supposed to be shot, making it even more cool.
The problem in the past has been the man turning us against one
And they had over 1,000 real New York citizens just there to watch the whole production.
10 square feet of ground. Our turf. Our little piece of turf.
Little piece of turf.
The turf is
I love it so much. He's so
He's so
bold with the way he talks and with his hand movements, you know?
Keep up the general truce.
It's like, I can't tell if he's like a gang leader or a cult leader. He's kind of got a little bit of both.
Secure our territory. secure our turf. Because it's all our turf.
Amazing. I mean, it's kind of hard. It's hard not to get a little bit excited just hearing the speech and the way he says it. It is electric. The screening of this movie, too, caused real riots. This movie really got people revved up. If you've ever seen the movie, you know, after you see the movie, you always feel a little tougher than you actually are. The feeling of watching it in a theater with a bunch of people, especially if you're anywhere near New York where it was filmed, you know, you're going to feel that electricity from the performances of this movie. And in this case, the screenings of the movie led to real hardcore fights with people getting injured and people getting mangled and people getting mauled and people getting trampled. That's pretty much the scene from here. Unfortunately, someone caps Cyrus from the audience. If you plan on watching the movie, I won't spoil it, even though it's been out for nearly 50 years. Also, this is one of Shaq's favorite movies. If you've ever seen Shaquille O'Neal giving an interview or maybe doing a speech at a ceremony, there has been multiple times where Shaq has said in an interview, "Can you dig it?" And in fact, his impression is significantly better than mine. Watch this.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
This was also on record as one of Ronald Reagan's favorite movies, so I don't know. Do with that information what you will. At the end of the day, this film is iconic. This scene in particular is referenced all the time, not just across my family, but I'm pretty sure across yours too. If you haven't seen The Warriors, I would highly recommend it. It's a fantastic movie and it will give you all of the grit and grime and dirt that you want from a late 70s thriller. Of course, guys, I want your feedback in the comments, so please leave us a comment letting us know what other iconic movie scenes you would love to see me break down and watch with you here on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.